Welcome everyone to a joint meeting of the Village of Lansing Board of Trustees and the Planning Board on Monday, August 7th, 2023. My first order of business is to call the Board of Trustees meeting to order, and I will do roll call first. Susan Ainsley.
Present.
Wolfgang Bulmer.
Present.
Carolyn Greenwald. Here. Drew Riedel.
Here.
Ronnie Hardaway is here. Next order is for the planning board, Mike Baker being the chair, to call its meeting to order.
I'd like to call to order the Village of Planning Board portion of the meeting to order at, what time is it, 7:31 p.m.? And I think everybody is here. Jim McCauley is joining us online today.
Okay, good deal. So the next order of business for tonight's meeting is public comment period. This is for anyone within the room and anyone online who would like to speak on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone here who would like to speak?
Carla Marso, I'm here as an observer for the community party.
Thank you, Carla. Anyone else? Hearing none and seeing none, I will move that we close the public comment period. Need a second?
Second.
Susan seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. The next order of business is within the purview of the Board of Trustees. We have to approve two meeting minutes for June 26th and July 13th, 2023. The attendees were different for each meeting. We know that Drew was out and Wolfgang was out for the July 13th meeting, but other than that, the June 26th, all of us were here. So I will move that we approve the draft minutes of June 26th, 2023 as final.
Second.
Wolfgang beat you just by a second. Wolfgang seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, the June 26th meetings are approved. For the July 13th meeting, as I said, Drew and Wolfgang were away, so that would be just Susan, Carolyn, and myself. I will move the July 13th, 2023 meeting, draft meeting minutes.
Second.
Susan seconds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, those minutes are approved too. Thank you. Now to the meat of tonight's meeting. There's a presentation by Alex Mergold, and he's going to be discussing a preliminary PDA proposal for the 20 Bomax Drive property.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. There is some paper copies for those of you who haven't seen it. I think this side of the table already has them. Maybe this side of the table doesn't, but feel free to pass them around. I guess I'll just.
That's it.
I mean, for the fear of being kind of redundant, should I just quickly summarize what we're trying to do, and then I can answer whatever questions you may have?
Let me ask, members of the planning board have a chance to look at any of the digital copies before tonight's meeting to come up with any questions? Did the planning board members have a chance to look at them? Okay. Okay. Just summarize for us, Alex.
Well, so in summary, I'm representing the team that is working on 20 Bomax Drive. Like I said last time, originally this was Tom Schickle project. He asked me to step in and help. And the idea is to take the existing factory building there and essentially convert it to a high-density residential area with a number of units, with an interior parking garage inside what is now the factory, covered by a kind of an open structure, which is essentially a public deck, and surrounded by various amenities like, well, green areas, basketball courts, picnic areas, and stuff like that. The idea being that the footprint of the existing factory is more or less the footprint of the building we're proposing, as to be kind of sensitive both to the residential area to the south and to the west, but also keeping in mind that the idea that an existing building is kind of an, let's say, a resource that would behoove us to use rather than demolish it and build a new. So in a nutshell, that's the kind of the big idea. Like I said, I'm happy to address individual sort of questions, concerns, please let me know. I also have, I remember last time there was a kind of, let's say, concern about the idea whether or not this thing has building windows. I showed kind of a rough massing. So it does have windows. I have a 3D model here that we've sort of dropped in partial windows, so you can kind of, feel free to pass this around, I guess. Kind of zoom through this. But in the meantime, like I said, feel free to ask any questions you may have.
Were there any outstanding questions from the Board of Trustees that we need to get an answer to from our last meeting? Mike?
I just wanted to touch on a couple items that I knew got brought up last time. A couple of the concerns the planning board had spoken about, and a couple that the mayor had mentioned. The last meeting was the type of housing, whether they're going to be rentals, whether they're going to be owner occupied, what type of housing you were looking at. And the other item would be if you could explain your conversation with Brent Cross about the sewer units, the availability of the sewer units.
Sure. All right. Well, so the type of housing, it's essentially workforce housing. That's the idea. Of course, it doesn't preclude graduate students and even retired people. With that in mind, you will see that this proposal is kind of massed essentially as 6 blocks, and each one of those blocks has a slightly different building character. Some of them are kind of traditional double-level corridors, some of them are a little bit more like townhouses, so that kind of caters to the potentially diverse population. But again, this kind of the essential, let's say, target is workforce. As far as the sewer unit, yes, I had several conversations with Brent, and he, I think, responded to the mayor, I believe, and actually to Mike. He basically said that the sewer units are indeed available. Of course, the question is the speed of construction, right? There are several sort of larger projects potentially brewing out there. So whoever gets there first gets them, essentially. That's Brent's summary. So there you go.
Any other questions from the Board of Trustees? And feel free to speak up later if another question pops up in your mind. How about planning board members?
How many units are there total? Do you remember?
Well, it's a little too early to say, but we're in the kind of 250 unit area, at least related to parking and what we can do without essentially creating, you know, without making the whole thing a parking lot zone, which is also not the idea. The idea is to have a kind of sizable green buffer around this whole thing so that, you know, it's available for recreational purposes, but also kind of separates this property from others.
So you said that the footprint is relatively what it is, or the plan is to keep it relatively, what does that mean exactly? Like, what kind of min-max kind of increase might you be considering?
Well, if you look at the plan, which is...
I can't really understand. When I'm looking at this visually, I look at that versus the next one, and I'm not.
All right, well, can I approach the table?
So this is the new one, right?
That's a new one, so
And
basically...
he's looking at this one.
Actually, probably the easier thing would be to look at this page.
Okay,
So the red and the pink here is the existing
okay,
footprint,
so it's.
right? So it's this kind of purple, but the idea is this is the existing wall, so it becomes an interior wall, whereas here it's an exterior wall,
Good,
right?
okay, yep, thank you.
All right.
Then go.
In the environmental assessment, the form that you filled out, you know, the very last sentence and then the brief description of it, I'll read it. This is an opportunity for the Village of Lansing not only to continue to provide affordable residences for our area, but also to lead the way in innovative adaptive reuse of an existing building project. So that word affordable there, and I know you talked about it a little bit more, but can you speak about what, this is the application that you filled out. Can you speak about providing affordable residences for our area?
Well, I think the developers are keenly aware that there is a kind of, the middle piece is missing, that the availability of housing, affordable housing for working families with medium to kind of low income, and that's essentially the kind of target population here. They're not trying to build a luxury sort of co-op situation. So that's, like I said, the kind of the goal of this thing is to pick up that kind of slack in the housing availability that is very, very tangibly here.
So I assume too that before this project was even thought about, that some studies on the existing rental ownership here in the village were done.
Well, the developers, went through their various performers. Yeah.
Have they taken into account, I'm curious what resources they use to take that into account. Did they look at the village's comprehensive plan? Did they look at the things that are currently being built? Did they look at the things that the village has approved? Did they look at the things that approved and underway versus approved and not underway yet?
Right.
When it comes to versus ownership versus rental and things like that.
Right. Certainly look at the comprehensive plan. I mean, whatever sort of public information is out there. But also looked at the existing situation, like what is there, what is not there. Even kind of scoured the various websites of landlords and to see what the kind of, what the median rents and stuff like that are. So the kind of, I don't know, let's say, twofold approach. On the one hand, yes, comprehensive plan, which sort of gives you a glimpse of what you're trying to do, but also trying to kind of understand what's already here.
Well, that's the reason I asked, right? Because the comprehensive, things have changed quite a bit in the village here with new projects and ownership and rental options since the last iteration of the
Yeah, and
comprehensive.
that was my sense too. And again, this is where I'm sort of trying to advise the development team as much as I can. I mean, I'm not gonna sort of tell them what to do necessarily from kind of their end of things, but yeah, I mean, that's what my sense of the development plan is it's a kind of a larger umbrella, but it doesn't necessarily go into sort of specifics, and probably, as you said, doesn't quite reflect what is kind of in that.
So what do you mean specifically in terms of the projected cost of the units?
Well, that's more of a question to the developer. What do you mean?
When you were saying that there's going to be a forecast, I'm asking you what you think that would be in terms of this project.
Well, I mean, this is not, like I said, this is not what my kind of area is. I'm happy to pass this information to the developers on what kind of price points they can.
I think that eventually that would be information that would be very relevant to this decision.
Yeah, of course.
Right, no, I think you're right, Carolyn, too, and that's kind of where I was leading is, at this point already, there is an idea of how much a project like this would cost and what you would need on the tail end to charge for rental units, given that that number could vary in order to make it profitable for the developer, which is what the developer's in it for, is to make a profit. And then also, right, this is a PDA proposal, so this isn't just this is something we can do in a place that it's zoned for. It's the reason that we have zoning here in the village. So why the PDA as opposed to normal zoning, that falls into the various zones around the village.
Right, well, we looked at the various existing zones, and we did not find a single one that would allow this kind of density on the property, right? So HDR is probably closest it gets. We figured that you can get probably 60 units under current HDR, which is nowhere near where the developers would think this project would be feasible, right? So, and it may look like it's sort of ready to go and build, but that's probably deceiving, because that's actually a pretty sort of schematic situation. So
Oh, this is a tremendous amount of work that you've already paid a consulting company to go and generate, so I don't.
I'm the consultant company.
It's a tremendous amount of work, and I think that I can speak from experience recently with the planning board, running up against places where they've gone off and generated these things, only to have to generate them and generate the demand, and it is a cost proposition, so I don't think we should belittle the amount of work or money that's gone into this, and the progress that's been done so far.
I have a question. So as a PDA, I mean, we've heard people tell us, oh, we're going to do workforce housing or whatever before, hasn't been this straightforward actually about that. But would we be able to control that?
With a condition?
Yes. Because I just think too, as you said, is, you get halfway through and then you find out it's cost more than expected, and suddenly, that might change, because I think affordable housing per the comp plan is, or workforce housing, I guess we're calling it these days, is really an important thing, or an important goal for the village.
Well, I mean, that's obviously up to you. I mean, I'm not gonna be suggesting, but I think you can probably write a certain percentage into the PDA.
Be an issue of enforcement after the fact that I would have to,
Okay.
how we could actually enforce it.
Were you looking at percentage of the units being workforce housing, or the entire development?
Well, to be honest, it's sort of too early to say. We're trying to kind of understand how many units can exist in here and what we can do with this existing building. And again, as you said, a fair amount of work went into that. So without sort of spinning too many wheels much further, we'd like to have your input first. So that's where we are.
Okay. John?
My name is John with the DPW at the Village of Lansing. I'm concerned on a couple things. It's not just the available sewer units, it's the available sewer line capacity. I think the whole system leading down from Transact, that's the Transact building that you're talking to, down through the Lansing Trail 1 and 2 developments, and then comes out the grid down here and back of the mall. I think we really need to evaluate that. We have a couple areas of concern, and also water too. That area is supplied by Christopher Circle Tank, which is the town of Lansing's tank, and that would need to be hashed out with available water from that tank. And that goes to Bolton Point, and then the town of Lansing will be involved with water.
Okay, good to know.
Those are some of my biggest concerns before any kind of approach gets done, is that we vet out the available capacity on the sewer lines and the available water to the project.
John, is it possible in connection with this project for the developers to expand the sewer lines? Is that an option?
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely. If there's an area that's concerned and they want to follow through with their project, then they would be responsible for upgrading. Because right now we have the capacity in our system to function properly. So anything additional beyond that, the developer would be responsible for it.
What about water lines? Is that also true?
And the same thing, if they need a little bit more tank capacity or something like that, in the town of Lansing, we have an intermunicipal agreement with Bolton Point that we can't cause another municipality to do harm. And if our development causes their tanks to be at a concerning level, then they would have to come up with some other viable option to either build another tank or another alternative to get water. I mean, they have to stay on the grid or anything like that, but they might have to upgrade the system somehow. Whether it means completing a loop somewhere or something.
How would the developer determine at this point whether or not they need to expand the sewer line?
And that's the thing, if you put the cart before the horse and you approved it, I almost feel like they've invested this much time so far, I almost feel like they need to do a sewer study and a water capacity study.
Okay.
But it seems to me like there's a lot more work to do before you guys can give them an answer as far as the utility side of things.
And that's something the developer would do?
Sure, every developer has to do a sewer study as far as an engineer's report, basically what the development's gonna need, be required to do.
Well, yeah.
Have you done an engineering report at all on it?
We have an environmental report on it, but we haven't.
I'm figuring, I mean, just on Brent's capacity, there's 50,000 gallons per day coming from that development.
Yep. That's what I was figuring too.
I mean, that's using 200 gallons per day. Which is higher than the 10 state standards. I think the 10 state standards is like 160 gallons per day. It's somewhere around there because of the efficient toilets, the efficiencies and outlets.
Well, that goes without saying, obviously, we're not there yet, but the idea would be that all the fixtures, obviously.
Sure. And also too, you know, we have lost some developments, you know, like some up in Brown Road, I can't remember the one that just left, they use a tremendous amount of water too. So that this may be something that would take the place of that, you know, water consumption, up at Kionics, use a tremendous amount of water. But if anything goes back in there as a Kionics.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm really concerned. So what we've been using when we do our sewer capacity study, we use it like 3 or 4 year average. We've gone as far as that trip hotel back in on the study, just because if they did fire back up to full capacity again, we would be at an issue there. Another thing that ought to be considered too is the traffic study. I mean, the Bomax Road traffic signal at the post office was inspired in 2006 by the Warren Road Reconstruction Project, and the village kind of had a lot of, it wasn't 2011, I think it was. And we had a lot of influence in that traffic signal going in because of the post office, and at that point, Bomax Road was a dead-end road. It didn't go anywhere. And so now we've added all the traffic throughout the village as a cut-through. 250 cars a day, I mean, you saw that in the morning with employees coming in to transact, and then in the afternoon, it was a constant, you know, cycle. So, I mean, there may be some traffic signal timing that has all to do with the county.
Right, yes, traffic study, again, that's certainly something that we had in mind. Well, it's sort of the usual, sort of what goes first, chicken or the egg. I mean, the development team obviously is aware of all these things, but they at some point might probably want to have an indication that we would be inclined to consider it PDA as opposed to not, because when they go through all those, you know, studies.
Yeah, you know, to be honest, we have a development right now, it's been unfortunate right now, just in studies before they're even to the next table,
Right.
to the planning board stages. So they've been there once, then they come back to us to see about the capacities, and then they're gonna go back to the planning board, yeah.
Well, now, again, that's understandable that there is a kind of sort of back and forth, but I mean, originally, this development team was actually considering self-storage zone, which they sort of, for various reasons, rejected. So this seemed like a kind of a better idea for multiple points. But again, like I said, I'll kind of make a note of all the sort of various studies that I'm suggesting. But at the very least, could we count on the village's kind of cooperation in these studies? Whatever data you have, you could share all that.
You always cooperate.
Yeah, that's good.
I would say to the planning board
Me too.
that in general, I just really love the idea of trying to find housing and creative solutions, finding use for the factory. But my concern, my main concern, in addition to all the logistics, is that allowing for the height increase looming over the neighboring property. If that is either non-factor or resolved in a way, then I would say is a creative solution that we should strongly consider. That was just the only thing that gave me pause, and I would just love to hear what you guys think about that.
Well, if I may, just a side note, so 45 feet is what is currently allowed in the zone. I mean, it's not maxed out to that. And the proposal is to go 45 on the north, east, and south, and where it's really kind of abutting closer to a residential zone to go 1 story down to 35. So there's a kind of understanding that. And those actually buildings are fairly tall. I mean, they have a lot of roof on them that is not particularly used, but there's definitely height.
So you mentioned that the number of units was in the 250 area, and I assume there's some point beyond, if you lower that, it's not profitable for the developer. Can you give us a sense of kind of the range, the lowest to the?
Well, the developers, they were aspiring for 300, and I'm sort of, I'm trying to talk them off the cliff in that sense, because just just because the parking situation is becoming, just becoming. So I think 250 is their kind of sweet zone. How far down can they go? I, to be honest, don't know.
Right.
And I'm not even sure they know, because there's sort of so many factors involved in this thing, and such a kind of preliminary, that you can't really put a sort of dollar amount on this yet, one way or the other. But that's 250 more or less represents where they,
And that was kind of what necessitated the 45-foot height?
well, like I said, 45-foot height is there. The idea is I think we're able to squeeze 4 stories into this thing. With the existing, while keeping the existing perimeter wall and essentially kind of utilizing it as a front of the building.
The only danger that I would that sometimes we encounter as the planning board is when it's a PDA, it's a whole new zone. Anything else that you have in your mind may not apply any longer if the village doesn't find it kind of mutually beneficial. So it's just something to keep in mind. I think people confuse that. We've had a situation where they thought it would be the same as the underlying zone was at the time, and it's not.
Yeah, no, of course.
So I just want to put that out as a little caution.
No,
keep in mind.
Yeah, that's absolutely understood. I'm just saying that the existing 45-foot height is already there, meaning that it's not, we're not asking for 100 feet,
Exactly.
It's something that the village already more or less finds acceptable.
Hey, Jim, we haven't heard from you. Do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay.
You have an extra set of those plans?
Any other questions or concerns? A lot of the questions, obviously, Alex, are going to come up in the details.
Oh, yeah.
We start getting the details down the road. The first step is going to be for the Board of Trustees to decide if they want to open up a PDA for this development. And I think it might still be early to do that. Probably need to have at least one more discussion about it, unless the trustees are comfortable with doing it tonight.
It sounds like we should get the studies done as the next step.
Mike, can I just ask you, has everything that is listed in section 4 of A2 been provided?
I guess it's a matter of whether the trustees want the applicant to jump through the hoops now, or whether we send it to the planning board and let the planning board work on it and at least give Alec an idea that, okay, a PDA is possible or whatnot. So that's kind of a decision you'll end up having to make. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was, Appendix A2 does permit, once it is moved to the planning board, for them to request some additional information in the preliminary proposal. So that's a good time for any additional studies to be requested as well,
And once
before it's even consider a complete proposal.
Yeah, and then once all of that's gathered, then you got your developer's comments. So you will be allowed to ask for more and more and more information.
Lisa's
And you're not shy about it.
Why are you all looking?
Never been shy about it.
I guess my question is, should we tonight decide if we want to go forward with the PDA at all? And I'm talking to the trustees at this point. From the trustees' standpoint, is this a project that we would like to see within our village? Does it benefit the village? Before we pass it over to the planning board and ask them to take over with all of the gathering of details and gathering of information, and obviously the traffic studies. So I would like some feedback from the trustees on that. Are you comfortable with doing that tonight? Would you rather wait for one more meeting and have another discussion, or discuss tonight and decide?
I would be comfortable to do it. I saw what I needed to see. I have the other developments being approved by the planning board right in front of my nose. So I think I would be okay, I have the facts.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Carolyn, how do you feel if the study comes early into the planning board cycle?
So if we decide to approve a PDA, but this project is not, we can't come to agreement with the developer as to the terms, then the PDA is never formed?
Correct.
Yes.
So we're not forming the PDA.
No, you're saying we're interested in pursuing this at this
I'm
point.
interested in pursuing it.
Okay. Susan?
Agreed, given, I'm sort of in John's camp with, in terms of sewer,
I agree.
water,
Yeah.
all of that is real important because we have an infrastructure right now
Right.
that needs work.
Yes.
And until we, broadly speaking, until we correct the problems that we know we have, you know, putting the additional burden on a broken system is not something, you know, that, but we need to know.
Yeah.
And certainly we're committed to correcting the current problems we have, but burdening with.
Drew, I know that you coming into this late, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, so mostly, having seen this before about a month ago, I like the proposal, I like the ability to have more workforce housing, as is mentioned. I think some of the questions that you brought up, and I think we talked a little bit about stormwater, just kind of getting some of those things digested. Now, a lot of this will be handled by the planning board, but I guess from my personal perspective, since I just came back last night, from a personal standpoint, having another meeting to chew on it would be my preference, but that's not related to this project per se, but that would, you know, I'm okay going off of what I've heard so far, what I do know, I'm okay going forward, but I wouldn't mind another meeting or a little more time to think about it, but that's just my personal perspective.
Okay. Shall we vote?
Well, but I would just like to clarify that you wouldn't be approving a PDA or anything like that, you're just
No.
referring it to
Referring it,
the,
all we're doing
for
is
further
referring it to the planning
consideration.
board. So Mike, a lot of the information coming out of the planning board, I think we can probably gather from Mike, at least during our monthly meetings about the progress. Is that correct, Mike? And if there's anything else beyond that that you need to know, you're welcome to ask questions and copy us so that we all get the answers in the meantime. So would you be comfortable with that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Then I will move.
Mike has a second.
And I just wanted to add, I'm
Sorry.
sorry, Ronnie, I just
Sorry.
also wanted to add, Drew, that the planning board also does not approve this. This eventually comes back to you, recommends.
We'll make a recommendation to the
you,
trustees.
Where you.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, good, okay. Okay, great, thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, and we can alter PDA to our benefit if there's something that we think the planning board forgot or didn't want to do or did different. We have, as trustees, we have the ability to change that too. We rarely have to do that because we have a really good planning board, but it's always there as an option.
That's great, okay, that changes the.
Okay. So I will move that we hand this off to the planning board to begin the process of them helping to develop a PDA. I would need a second. Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. Okay, good deal. Thank you, Carolyn. And thank you, planning board. I know, wow, our job's done. Obviously, and this is to all of us, but specifically for the planning board, if there are things that the Board of Trustees can do, I can do to help in any way, let me know. Let us know. So, but I appreciate it.
But we'll always have one of the liaisons attend our meetings.
Absolutely.
They'll be bringing you news back.
Yes, absolutely. We will, and we will pay attention, and probably early on, I'd like to attend the meetings and see what's happening anyway. It's just, you know, I'm a geek. So, anyway, thank you all.
So when it comes back to the Board of Trustees, which will be far along in the process, I think what we'll be looking for is contributions to the village, and so the price point of the apartments is gonna be a key factor for us
Yeah.
in the eventual approval. So please have the developer keeping that in mind from the beginning.
Right.
The planning board will remind you.
How is the village benefiting from forming the PDA? We have to have justification.
Well, that was why I asked the question.
Yes.
Whether we have a little more control over that as a, for the PTA, because that is very important.
Yeah.
Us,
Or a major selling point for this is
Yes.
true workforce development, housing. I know the county needs this, and it's good for the village, it's good for all of us, so that's the goal for us. And you've said that as part of your presentation, so I'm sure it is for you too. But if the price starts to creep up, speak up early so that we can try to negotiate something and try to get the best and most workforce housing that we can within the development.
Right. Yeah, no, that's certainly makes sense, and that's the intention.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone tonight before I move on? Alex, anything?
No, well, thank you for, there's sort of more and more of you every time. So thank you for coming despite potential storms and hearing this out. And I'm looking forward to, I guess, working now this side of the table and then eventually that side of the table. So, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Okay.
Thank you all.
The next topic is to authorize attendance at NICOM for our fall training school. Who do we have going so far,
So
Julie?
it's September 18th through 22nd in Lake Placid, and the only one that has expressed any interest so far is Susan. And I don't know if anybody else would be interested in attending. The fall training school, it's wonderful. You learn a lot of different areas, what's going on. It's great networking. You can talk to other trustees or mayors or clerks or whatever, and it is really good training. So I recommend it.
Well, one issue I see is, I'm looking at the calendar, is that Monday night is a trustees meeting, the 18th, so we would have to have a quorum or postpone or cancel that one meeting.
I won't be
So-
here either. I'll be in Serbia.
I think I know what's happening.
No, we'll work, that was an issue. I'm considering going myself, but I don't, if there's any other trustee that wants to go in my stead, but if Susan's gonna be going, I'm thinking I would go too. And if I can't, I'll let you know as soon as possible.
Refresh my memory, is it 2 spots we had budgeted, or?
Yes.
Too.
Okay.
Yep.
But Drew, if you would like to go, I'll back off.
Okay, I'll find out.
Yeah, just let me know. I can go either way. I enjoy the conference. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. Lots of good people, lots of good information, and you learn a lot from the Q&As as much as you do from the presentations. I highly recommend it. I haven't been in a while. I'd like to go back and refresh and meet people, but I would prefer to have you and Susan go if possible, but let us know.
Okay, so we really need to pass a resolution to send 2 people. So do you want to do Ainsley and Drew? And then if it changes, then we'll read it, because I got to get them registered.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and register you.
Right,
And then if it happens that you can't go, okay.
I'll stand in for you. So I would make I would like to move a resolution to send Susan Ainsley and Drew Riedel to this year's NICOM conference, fall NICOM conference. Second. Wolfgang seconds. Any discussion? Carolyn, how about you?
No discussion.
Oh, you sure you don't want to go?
I think that it's the best for the village if the newer people go.
Okay. All right.
Carolyn, you've been, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just.
It is great. It's really, it's a great conference. It's actually fun, and it's very informative. I do think that it'll be good for everybody.
And everyone's really nice, and they're all willing to answer questions or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very good. Okay. The resolution has been moved. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Okay. Next topic are my comments. I only wanted to make 2 comments. One, and they're both related to our sewer expansion project. Oakcrest Road, John, did it close today, officially down to 1 lane?
Tomorrow.
Okay, well, it will start tomorrow.
Temporary closed, we'll open back up at 4 or 5 o'clock.
Okay, all right. And how's the,
Ask a question then, but that means there will be access on Cayuga Heights Road?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, they've always let the locals in and out. I mean, you haven't had an issue, have you?
No, I just, Chris gets
It's kind of
closed.
inconvenience by
It's-
far, but
We can go sort of one direction more than the other, that's all. So it's good to
Yeah.
just know what's going on, yeah.
yeah, we have to get that storm sewer replaced. We've window of opportunity to do it, and the rains have been not cooperative, and
They sure haven't.
we've been trying to help the residents, knowing that the Cube Heights Road's been a disaster, but that road's up for repaving this year, and we need to get that done.
Oakcrest. Actually, it's been really nice to not have traffic on Cayuga. But the trencher is a little noisy.
okay, and the other thing I was going to say, the sewer expansion project is obviously underway from both ends, and it's ongoing, so just, it's proceeding as planned.
Do we have, I'm getting a lot of questions from the neighbors.
What sort of questions?
Timeline,
Fall.
I said, well,
I think.
yeah, but actual hookups, and sort of a
Oh.
lot of questions, and I just didn't know whether you were going to have an information session ever.
We have something on the website, and I think pretty much it sends it to John.
Okay.
So you just refer, yeah.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
well, I know one of my neighbors said he'd spoken to you. And then- Yeah, okay. That's the best thing, is just have them get in touch with John.
I'll get with John and see, and Jody, and we'll see if there's something, we can put something that's a little more informative on the website and point people to it.
The only, well, it is on the website, but the only problem is it's so technical for each different hookup, correct? So it's not a cookie cutter how it goes.
I couldn't have a boilerplate detail for any one home.
So the timeline, though, for people having to, isn't there a deadline as to when people have?
3 years after it's completed.
3 years after it's completed, or else? What happens?
They have to apply for a variance through the Board of Trustees, from my understanding.
And that's what I really need.
Which we probably would grant. It depends, it will be on a case-by-case basis, obviously.
All right.
Oh, it's just like a development.
Well, I think one of the minimum criteria should be that it's engineering health department reevaluated. Like if your system, you might not know how your system's working, but I think my recommendation to the Board of Trustees was an engineer's saying that the system is still functioning correctly, and 2 is the health department is fine with a delay.
I see, okay. Because, yeah, I was going to say, a good septic system is not a bad thing in general, so if somebody has done it fairly recently.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to.
It's,
They're not forced to do it,
So-
and we talked about that, and down the road, if they've got a new system and it's got a life of 15 or 25 years or whatever, then down the road,
okay,
we
so
would still.
the variance thing is the point, and I don't know that we've ever been unreasonable about those things, so, okay, that's good, I'll pass that along to
Okay,
everybody.
probably should put something online about variance, but we don't want
I
to
think
fight that.
Natalie's really gonna have to, Natalie and Mike are really gonna have to craft
Yeah, we don't want to,
I think there ought to be a list of criteria for a variance.
Yeah.
Because we want people, environmentally, we want people to connect.
yes.
Yes,
That's
right.
the whole purpose of the sanitary sewer system.
Yeah, you don't want to
It's
delay.
But I think if there is like obstacles, like you have a mile, like a perfect example is Rockcrest Lane. Those people have frontage on East Shore Drive, but their house is on another road.
Yeah,
That might be a unique situation where they're gonna have to run a line 1,500 to 2,000 feet to get up to East Shore Drive, all uphill. So I mean, there's a lot of issues that may drive the variance along, and I think that's where Mike and Natalie need to shine. With that, I'll make some recommendations, of course.
Okay.
It's in the code that you have to hook up with it. If sewer is available, you have to hook up within 3 years. Why is it a variance has to go through the Board of Trustees and not the BZA?
Oh, maybe it does, I guess.
I don't know, I have to figure out why, or if
I'll
that's
check it
more reasonable,
tomorrow.
go through trustees.
Yeah, if it's more reasonable, and if it's actually our process to go through the BCA for something like that, that's fine
It's not a
too.
zoning issue, though.
It's a code.
Is it a revenue thing?
It's a code issue. It's a code
It wouldn't
issue.
be out of 145,
Oh,
so.
yeah, no, it isn't just. an issue. It's a
I'll look at it
code
tomorrow.
issue.
We'll work it out.
Confirm who has the
Let everyone- Work it out and let
3 years
everyone
to do
know.
it, so it's not gonna be an issue
what
for a
we
while.
have.
Okay.
So we could have it by noon, you think?
Probably like 11:55.
Take your time. We've got time to do it
They do
right.
have 3 years to hook up.
Right.
We still
Clearly
applying for
crafting the variance now.
Correct, and we still have a 2 or 3 months of actual construction
Yes.
work to go, so you got a little time.
Okay, 3 years from now. I got you.
Wait till the last minute, have absolutely the best information we have.
Exactly.
Sure, I understand. Makes perfect sense. That's all I had for tonight. General discussion, Carolyn, do you have anything for us tonight?
Yeah, so my neighborhood had their annual block party, and it was interesting that more than one person was in favor of increasing the density of the village. And so I just wanted to point out that there is at least some people recognizing that big lots with
Yeah.
one house is not beneficial to the development of the, it's just not, it's just kind of just keeping people out, and it's elitist, and it's not beneficial towards, a more equitable society and a village that is walkable and diverse and vibrant. So, I'm not gonna reopen the issue of along the sewer line, whether those houses should be rezoned or it should be allowed to be more dense, but it's good to just think about that in general, that at least what I'm hearing from the villagers is that they're in favor of density. One of them in particular was saying how she wants a certain high-density kind of condo situation as she gets older and isn't finding exactly what she wants to get out of the big house into something smaller.
Okay.
And doesn't see exactly what she's looking for.
Okay, well, that's interesting. That's good to know. It's a good perspective. And that person is not the only one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it helps. Anything else?
That's it.
Drew?
Not for me this time.
Wolfgang?
The Safe Roads for All initiative. 2 questions. First of all, do we pay for the consulting company?
We will pay our portion of it when the consultant bill comes in, and we're billed for that. So we've already set aside money in our budget to pay for it.
Okay. Second question, as I sent you an email, is that only hardware project, so sidewalks, crossings, traffic lights, things like that? Or is there also a kind of education portion?
Typically, the ones that I've seen have had educational parts of it too, where you let people know what's available. So it's included. I haven't seen the final report, but I'm almost certain that it would be there. First of all, you've got to educate people about the projects that we plan to do so that they can know that they're coming up, because some of them could be fairly major. And the smaller ones, you want people to know when they see a green painted lane, that is a bike lane. And, or if it's striped a certain way, that's a certain thing. And so as far as I know, the educational part is included in that. I'll check, and if it's not, I'll ask about it.
Yeah.
Because I agree, it should be there.
Well, I walk a lot and I bike a lot. All the safety issues I saw the last 4 weeks have nothing to do with hardware. Nothing. Not at all. That's all education and not paying attention and, going back to kindergarten. So, anyway.
I understand.
No, really, it's
Yeah.
it's horrible what you can see here.
One of my questions was related, in one of the meetings that was tangential to that, was the e-bike system. what prevents a person who has absolutely no concept of what the laws are riding a bike from renting an e-bike, getting on an e-bike, and going whatever speed limit the bike can go and break laws and themselves and/or someone else? So that's the same thing. You've got to restrict it to people who can use the bikes and also use the features and so forth that the Safe Streets for All projects will be doing. So, and along that line, everyone's seen my email and the list I've started for projects in the village. Okay, I think I added at least one more that I thought of. So if you have any other ideas, continue to add to that list, because when they schedule our interview, we'll start that interview then. We can always add to that later if we've completed our interview and they go on with it, something else comes up, we can shoot them an email and say, here's another one that we thought about. I'm sure they would be happy to get as much detail as they can before the final report is written for us.
Okay.
But Ronnie, just a quick question. So enforcement is one way to educate. We don't have a lot of control, in my understanding, in terms of, because that would generate some revenue that could pay for some of these things, but that's something we just don't have.
No.
Anything that happens in the village goes to the town.
Yeah.
They have the court system.
Okay, great, thank you.
Right. But I was thinking more of in the county, from the county standpoint. A lot of the e-bikes are down in the city now, and they're transported out to where people will start riding them. Anybody can get on the bike as long as they've got a credit card, I guess, or an app to rent the bike and start riding it.
And to Wolfgang's point too, I mean, like, biking violations are one of those are not addressed.
No.
Anywhere that I've seen in the village, anywhere in Ithaca.
But no.
Yeah, I mean, but it's important, right, like you said, you can get on one, you don't know what you're doing, it's dangerous, it's education.
I gave Ronnie an example. Germany, where I'm from, the kids in elementary school, third grade, they have to do a bike license.
Yeah.
If they don't have the sticker, they don't ride the bike, period, end of the story. Or at least not to school or some other public places. And it's probably as hard as getting a driver license here, honestly. It's a written test, it's a writing skills test, some questions, some situations, things like that.
Great.
It's coming out of that. Don't do, I just came across down in Cass Park, and there is this S before you cross the road.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So a father and probably a 5-year-old, the 5-year-old riding on the left side, father on the right side, next to each other, and I come with my mountain bike, so fortunately I'm pretty good in, avoiding obstacles and things like that. Otherwise I would have run over the kid. And that's what I mean by education. Why the heck you have your kids right next to you in something where you can't see around the corner? It's just plain stupid. Simple as that.
I agree with you.
And you see a lot of these kind of things.
Yeah.
I would like to see walkers face traffic when they walk.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, it's not just bikers, right?
Exactly. That's another one of these.
I have considered printing up little things, and when I see somebody stopping my car and handing it to them with the data on how many people that are hit and killed by cars were facing the wrong direction, including Stephen, or no, he might have been he was hit by a car, and I think he was actually not facing the right. At any rate, I'm totally with the whole scene, but it's the father that needs the education in your situation. Not the poor kid.
So,
In addition, but the father should have been educated.
Well, how should the kid know?
No, exactly, modeling.
Anyway.
so you're correct.
Yep, you certainly are.
And, safe streets starts with people knowing the rules and laws. Okay, anything else? No. Carol, Hey, Susan,
No, Carolyn's already had it.
I'm sorry.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Thanks.
There's nothing else on our agenda. Mike, would you like to close the planning board meeting?
I will entertain a motion to adjourn the planning board portion of the joint meeting at 8:24 PM.
Second?
Motion by Lisa, second. Second by Pat, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Okay. And I will move that the trustees adjourn at 8:24.
Second.
Wolfgang's getting fast. Wolfgang seconded.
Like a ding.
All those in favor say aye. Aye? Okay. We're adjourned for the evening. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, planning board members, for coming out tonight.
Like a little buzzer.
When's our next planning board meeting?
Monday.
Next Thursday.
10 days from today, the 17th.
I will not be here.
Okay.
I think I already have that on my calendar.
Okay, Carolyn, thank you for letting us know.
I can't get seats.
21st.